70 years after its release, Alfred Hitchcock's Rear Window is still a one-of-a-kind masterpiece that has transcended time. Hitchcock's brilliant production manipulates the audience to his will and leaves you on the edge of your seat until the final minutes of the film. Let's break down Rear Window.
What is up, movie friends? Welcome back to Raiders of the Lost Podcast, the ultimate film and TV podcast. And today we're going to be breaking down an all-time classic, one of Alfred Hitchcock's greatest masterworks, Rear Window, starring Jimmy Stewart and Grace Kelly. This is, without a doubt, one of the great landmark films in cinema history. I was lucky enough to catch a re-release at AMC Theaters, and I saw it in a huge cinema, giant screen, crazy sound, and it was an unbelievable experience. It's one of my favorite cinema experiences so far this year. It's in like my top 5, even comparing it with new releases. It's that special of a movie. And no matter how many times you see this film, it keeps getting better and better. And that's something that's special about Hitchcock, about great filmmakers, is I love revisiting their movies, because when you know the story so well, the more times you watch their films, the better sense you have for what exactly they're doing. What are they doing with the camera? What are they doing with the blocking? Why are they choosing this in the frame? Why are they choosing to do this kind of lighting setup? Why is this happening? Hitchcock was an extremely meticulous, detailed director, much akin to Fincher or Kubrick. He had his films pre-planned and edited in his mind before he even started shooting, and he's very detailed. And so this is an example of everything you see on screen in Rear Window is deliberately done. And there are so many incredible behind-the-scenes aspects to it. The production was pretty interesting, as well as there's a lot of mysterious and great parallel subtext and metaphors in the characters. And it's also, like many films of its day, kind of wrongly judged for its portrayal of gender norms, which I want to get into later in this episode. But overall, I think it's up there. It's hard to pick what your favorite Hitchcock movie is, but it's up there with Vertigo and Psycho. Those three are just absolute mammoths.
It's one of the most impressive feats of directing I've ever seen in my entire life. I think I've seen it maybe 5 or 6 times. I see it every few years. First time way back in the day, I think I was a teenager for the first time.
Yeah.
I was a baby when I first saw Hitchcock. No, it was actually unavailable for 3 decades for a while to the Hitchcock family, because of the rights were bought back by Sir Alfred Hitchcock and left as part of his legacy to his daughter. Then it was able to get finally re-released around the world.
I think it only played on TV like 1 or 2 times between that period. Like, I think in the 70s it played on TV twice, and that was it for people being able to watch the film over that entire 30-year span or something.
It was televised once in 1971. Then for 3 decades, they couldn't put it anywhere because the rights were up in dispute. And so this was actually part of Hitchcock's Paramount deal to direct Rear Window. He used to make his films, obviously, with Warner Brothers, but they had a falling out. And obviously, he was in the market, very similar to Christopher Nolan.
Oh, my God.
So in the summer of 1953, Lew Wasserman, then Hitchcock's agent at MCA, he arranged a deal with Paramount Pictures for the director to make a total of 9 films for them. Mm-hmm. As it turned out, he only made 6. The unusual contract called for the rights of these 5 films to revert to Hitchcock 8 years after the initial release. Rear Window was the first film that the director made under the Paramount contract, and was one of those that he would actually own the rights to. And then he actually obviously shot this on the Paramount lot, filmed in November 1953 to January 1954 in Los Angeles at Paramount Studios. Released in 1954, directed by Alfred Hitchcock, written by John Michael Hayes, based on the short story It Had to Be Murder by Cornell Woolek.
Are you going into a synopsis?
In a bit.
Let's hear it.
IMDb, Rear Window is an 8.5 with 529,000 ratings. That puts it at number 52 on the all-time user rating list on IMDb. Rotten Tomatoes, it's a 98% critic score, 95% audience score. On a budget of $1 million, this film has grossed $37 million at the box office globally. That's with its theatrical re-releases, which they did. There's one in the 80s, one in the 70s. And just a little quick synopsis
Here
for
we
Anthony.
Well, I forgot. You didn't throw a letterbox rating in.
Oh, what is the letterbox?
It has a great letterbox rating.
Sure, it's very high.
4.4.
Sorry, I forgot about letterbox.
It's top tier rating.
Quick little synopsis of Rear Window. Professional photographer L.B. Jeff Jeffries broke his leg while getting an action shot at an auto race. He's confined to his New York apartment, so he spends his time looking out the rear window observing his neighbors. He begins to suspect that a man across the courtyard may have murdered his wife. Jeff enlists the help of his high society fashion consultant girlfriend, Lisa Fremont, and his visiting nurse, Stella, to investigate.
This is one of the purest senses of filmmaking ever. And for someone like Hitchcock, he was always such a visual genius. I think that he really stands the test of time as being one of the greatest directors ever, if not possibly the greatest. And he taught a new language of how to move the camera, and he was reinventing filmmaking as it was happening. I mean, he started in the early days of filmmaking, like decades before this came out. He was making movies, so he really was integral to the evolution of directing. And he's always been known for being a visual stylist and probably the best visual director ever. But what's so interesting about Rear Window is, yes, it's visually stunning, but ultimately it comes down to Hitchcock's restraint that makes this such a powerful film and an absolute masterclass of directing, because of his restraint of, if you think about this movie, you think about the placement of the camera, what makes this film so special is the camera barely moves in its positioning. So we stay basically in Jeff's apartment with him. The camera will basically move in a few areas. It's probably like a 15 square foot area where the camera actual positions are. And most of the time, it's very much heavily right next to Jeff or the other characters. Sometimes there's a couple of scenes when his detective friend comes, and then one scene with Lisa where we actually get a reverse shot with the windows behind them. That only happens twice. Otherwise, we're facing Jeff with the window behind us. The camera, if you think about where they're actually putting the camera in this movie, it's not that big of a space. And on top of that, we get the exterior shots looking into the window of Jeff's apartment. If you think about that, that's really just one camera placement. So what's so special about this film, because it is so suspenseful, because it is one of the most thrilling pieces of cinema ever, somehow Hitchcock, with his DP Robert Burke and his editor, crafted this incredible, riveting film by barely placing the camera in any other spots from right next to Jeff, which is just unbelievable. And that really puts the audience into Jeff's perspective, being trapped in that room, being stuck in that chair, being basically powerless and immobilized to do anything. All we can do is look at people. All we can do is voyeuristically watch the neighbors. And they also, this kind of filming technique makes you want to observe the neighbors just as much as Jeff, because we're not in their homes like every other film shoots. We're not right up to them. We're just observing them. And the film is amazing because there are points where you're craning your neck to get a better view inside Thorwald's apartment or inside the singer's apartment, just like Jeff is. He's trying to get better views and angles to see better. This camera work in this movie does a remarkable job of making you really feel like you are in that perspective.
And I think it probably must have been so difficult to shoot. And the huge challenge here was, at first, Hitchcock wanted to film this in New York. He wanted to film it in Manhattan. But then they realized, we can't do that. So then he's like, what if we just build our own little neighborhood on a soundstage? So they did. They constructed an entire soundstage for Rear Window, which consisted of 31 apartments. 8 of them were completely furnished, and 1,000 arc lights to simulate sunlight up above. Hitchcock felt the buildings weren't tall enough, so he had the studio ground floor and the basement torn out, revealing the studio basement, which acted as the courtyard and street level. So the courtyard is actually the basement of the soundstage, and
they dug into it. Yeah,
it necessitated the design and construction of this gigantic composite set. And although some of the action takes place in Stewart's apartment, the remaining action occurs in and around the neighboring apartments, as seen from Stewart or Jeff's viewpoint. The enormous set was designed by art director Joseph McMillan Johnson and built on one of Paramount's largest sound stages. The stage was number 18. It was 184 feet by 98 feet by 40 feet. So a massive, massive soundstage constructed under the supervision of Hitchcock himself, which approximately took 6 weeks and 52 men to complete. It cost close to, I believe, $100,000 at the time. This set was one of the largest ever built at Paramount. It was very realistic and comprised of 31 apartments again. And all the apartments surrounded a multi-level courtyard approximately 70 feet wide. Some of the apartment buildings were almost 5 stories high. The set also included a Manhattan skyline, gardens, trees, fire escapes, smoking chimneys, and an alley leading to a street complete with bar, pedestrians, and moving traffic. Even cars and the hoses sprayed down multiple times. The lower levels of the courtyard were built below the stage level floor, level, while the walls of Jeffrey's apartment were wild and could be moved to accommodate various camera angles. And according to Robert Burks, the DP, we pre-lit every one of the 31 apartments for both day and night, as well as lighting the exterior of the courtyard for the dual type illumination required. And this is so challenging because you have so many apartments. You're shooting from 70 feet apart from our main character, Jeff, looking at a courtyard at characters that are 70 feet away. And what Hitchcock does brilliantly is you're trying to stay just in the perspective of Jeff. You're trying to stay in his perspective, which is looking out his window, just the naked eye, or he's also looking through binoculars, also looking through his telephoto lens of his camera. The binoculars get him a closer look. The telephoto lens gets him a very close look, like when he's watching Thorwald clean up the saw and that hatchet kind of knife in the sink with newspaper. That's the telephoto lens. You get a really close view, as well as looking at the jewelry in the handbag that he's pulling out. That's the telephoto lens. Now, this technical challenge provided by the filming were formidable and stemmed mainly from their requirement of virtually all shots shooting across that courtyard. And so, again, we're looking at 40 to 80 feet, depending on which apartment that Jeffries is looking at.
So I can actually add on that. It's Thorwald, by the way.
What did I say?
Thornwall.
Did I say Thornwall?
Yeah.
Thorwald.
Thorwald. So there are
Doorman.
Doorman. There are three, like you said, perspectives that emulate Jeff's perspective. So they, like you said, they did the wide angle long shots for when he's just plainly looking out the window. And that's when we see it's a very wide, we're seeing multiple floors, and we're just seeing the characters are very small in the frame. And then when he uses the binoculars, they go to a medium focal length. And then we're getting like medium wide. So we're getting much tighter to the characters, but it's not a close-up. But we are seeing the frame is right above the windows, each window. So we're getting to see more isolated shots, and we're much closer. But then when he uses, like you said, the telephoto lens on his camera, then we're getting these not exactly close-ups. It's still like a medium close rather than a close-up. And what's interesting is that camera lens is actually a 400 millimeter, which would really zoom in. So it's not actually accurate to that lens he put on his camera. What they ended up using for the longest focal length was about 120 millimeters. And the reason for that is these are older cameras. They weren't as light. They weren't as light sensitive as they are now. And so if you use a very long focal length, like a 400 millimeter, like if they actually used that real telephoto lens, it would have been extremely difficult to focus. And the depth of field would have been so shallow that really they could have only focused maybe on an actor in their apartment, but the rest of their apartment would have been out of focus. So two ways they got around this. They didn't use exactly a 400 mil. They went 70 to 120 tops, but also they used a shit ton of light in this movie. That was the only way to use these long lenses while still making sure that everything is in focus. If you look at this movie, when we're looking outside of Jeff's apartment, everything is in detail. There's not an image that isn't sharp. And they do that by just filling the set with shit ton of light. They used every single light that Paramount owned on this set to the point where they had to turn off the sprinkler alarm system because it was getting so warm inside the set. And that was the only way they were able to really film this in this certain way without losing any detail or sharpness of images.
They also had to, for those telephoto camera shots through his lens, they had to stick the camera on a boom and push it out the window into the courtyard because they still had to get close enough because they couldn't get as much detail as they wanted on the image, especially at that 5.6 f-stop.
They needed a lot of light, man.
They needed a lot of light.
But still, it looks really fabulous. It's one of the better-looking Hitchcock movies, and I love the lighting because, yes, it's all artificial, but they did a great job of making it feel true to the interiors. They also had a great use of color contrast with the nighttime scenes having this really great, cool moonlight. And then the daytime scenes, they're very warm. Like, these are particularly warm, considering. And I think that they wanted to showcase the heat of the summer in New York City. Jeff's sweating, it's sweltering. And with the warm light, we're really feeling that sunlight, and we're feeling that heat because one of the first shots is that thermometer where it's like 98 degrees. So they did a great job with the lighting where most of the daylight is actually very warm rather than a more balanced, cool, neutral, like midday light that you normally would get. And on top of that, talking about the set and the camera work, the film starts with this amazing opening of Hitchcock and Robert Burke showing us basically the rules of this movie. We're going to stay right here. This camera tracks from, it pushes in through the window, and then it tracks from a cat on the steps walking up, and then we do this really great tracking and panning and tilting of all of the neighbors. We're seeing everybody who's going to come and play in this film. We're also showcasing that this is going to be a voyeuristic approach to the film. And then this camera, amazingly, pulls back after it shows everybody. It pulls back and tracks to Jeff. We got a close-up on his face, and somehow that's still in focus. You can imagine how much light was on on Jimmy Stewart in this scene to make sure he's in focus that close to the camera. And then we get to see his life, who he is. They did a great job. Within a minute, we know who this guy is based upon his work, his photography. There's a negative image that's framed, which then goes to the magazine cover. We know he's a photographer. We know he's injured. And we know he's stuck in a wheelchair. But also we know he's an adventurous guy. Most of his photography is very exciting, action-based photography. And then we learned that he got his injury by taking a very daring photo right in front of two cars in a race. And that's what ended up causing his injury. So we know within a minute and a half who this guy is and what his situation is in this moment.
And then leading to the phone call with the editor of the magazine asking, "Oh, are you off work? Are you coming in tomorrow?" "No, I'm in this cast for another week. I guess you don't remember.
Next Wednesday.
You don't have that good of a memory, do you?" So, and also, I mean, there's a lot of things, a lot of great details in this film. For example, Jeff is a war veteran. Him and Doyle used to fly a plane together. There's a small, quick little line. How do we stand each other for those 3 years inside that plane during the war? That's how they're such good friends. They do anything for each other, it seems like. And then even one of the photographs on the wall of Jeff's apartments is a photograph of him standing in front of an aircraft during World War II. Now, James Stewart actually served active duty as a U.S. Air Force pilot during World War II, flying missions as a B-24 pilot. He's a very decorated officer, going on to be a brigadier general at one point in his career.
Wow, damn.
So yeah, James Stewart was a very accomplished man. James Stewart is just really charismatic, and he's really likable. Even though there are parts about Jeff that you don't like too much, he's a little fussy. You know, he's like Woodcock in Family. He's a little fussy. But I get it. You know, he's irritable. He's been in this cast. He's been stuck for 5 weeks now, in the same spot, in this wheelchair, in this cast. He's a guy that has to move. He has to go see the world. He talks about all the different places he's been. He's been to China. He's been to Pakistan. He's been all over the world. He's eaten all kinds of food, which is why he's trying to dissuade Lisa from continuing their relationship, because obviously we'll get into that later on, how she's too perfect for him in his eyes. But he's a guy that needs adventure. He needs to get on the move. He's being so antsy, and that's led to why is this such a voyeuristic film? Why is this character constantly looking out the window? Because he needs some action in his life, and all the action in the world that he can get right now is through his rear window. That's one of the main reasons why he's just ends up just watching his neighbors. It's all the activity he gets to see, because he can't do anything right now. He's stuck. He's stuck in this one spot, which is a great way to tell the story, where our protagonist, like our audience, we're just stuck. We can't really go anywhere. We're in this room with our main character. We can look around, but Hitchcock brilliantly puts us just in his shoes, where we can't leave at all. Even the other characters, Lisa and the nurse, they get to leave the apartments. They get to go do stuff. They get to go break into Thorwald's apartment. They get to Thorwald's apartment. They get to dig in the flower bush. Doyle gets to come and go, but our protagonist, our main character, is stuck just like us.
It also makes him powerless. You know, the broken leg is significant in many ways, and I also think that someone like Jeff, his character, and he talks to Lisa about like this crazy life he lives. She'll never fit in. She'll never be able to like live out of a suitcase and try to eat whatever food that you saw the animal yesterday, that whatever you're eating. And
no, if you ate it, if you saw the animal, you'd want to be sick.
Yeah, you'd sick when you saw it. And so he's always lived this extremely wild lifestyle, adventures, traveling, sleeping in uncomfortable areas, and the nitty gritty of world travel and world documentarian. But the broken leg has taken that away from him. He's now a completely powerless individual. I always think when I watch this movie, I always feel like Jeff, part of his lifestyle is to run away from commitment, run away from marriage, run away from any relationship he's in. So he's always used his career as a jet-setting photographer to excuse himself and escape. anything that confines him. One of his biggest fears is being controlled and being confined, and he's living that. His other biggest fear is marriage, I think. And so the broken leg takes his ability to run. So he's stuck here, and he basically has to face the problems of his life. He has to face dealing with this relationship where Lisa clearly loves him, but he doesn't want to get married, and he thinks marriage is the worst thing that could happen to him. He doesn't want, like he says, a nagging wife for the rest of his life, and he wants to be able to do whatever he wants, and having a broken leg doesn't let him do whatever he wants. And this really allows him to reflect and deconstruct who he is, how he's been living his life, and is it worthwhile to continue the career that he has, because he goes through a big transformation at the end of this film that he never would have if it wasn't for breaking that leg. And what's really cool is the characters in the film, his neighbors, actually all reflect different personality traits of Jeff. So on the surface, they might look like stereotypical characters or archetypes or just a random characterization of a person, but every one of his neighbors represents something important that mirrors what Jeff is going through in his mental state and his life. So the newlyweds, this young couple, they're super sweet. They just got married, and man, they're busy in that bedroom. The newlyweds.
Every time he goes to smoke a cigarette, Greg,
Larry. The newlyweds represent what he fears the most. Jeff fears marriage. Jeff fears being trapped, quote unquote, in a relationship and not being able to be free. He wants to be able to be this free man. I do what I want. I'm an adventurer. I'm not held down by a marriage or a woman. That's what he's afraid of. He's afraid of marriage.
But he's also enticed by when they first enter their apartments, their first apartment
Yes.
they've ever owned. They walk in, they're about to kiss, but the landlord comes, oh, in case you need anything, just let me know. Then they close the door, and they finally kiss, they embrace. He's like, oh, that's a very sweet moment. Then they leave the apartment. He's like, oh, this is curious. They left the door open. And then he carries his wife in, very traditional kind of thing to do,
Yeah.
our first home together. And he's very, allured by that. It's a very sweet part of it.
Yeah.
But then he starts to scoff at him when every time the guy has a cigarette break,
He's got no freedom.
He can't go anywhere.
Yeah.
So yeah.
He sees like it. Oh, you can't help but smile at the cuteness of the marriage. But then he's seeing, oh, this guy's trapped. He can't do anything. He must be miserable because Jeff's looking at everyone from the outside. He has no idea about the context of what's going on in those rooms. Only what he can see from an outsider perspective. He thinks that guy might feel trapped, and yeah, I guess the guy. I think he's like a little tired a couple of times, but he might not understand. Maybe that guy is like happily married. He probably is happily married to his wife, but Jeff thinks he's miserable from the outside perspective.
That's one of the great parts about this film, with this voyeuristic quality of Jeff, this moral, ethical ambiguity. Of course, he's actually solving a murder, but is he really? The whole film, we're kind of manipulated by Alfred Hitchcock. Is he really? Do we believe what he's saying? He's kind of unreliable at times. He misses some details here and there, but also that moral quality of, can I do this? This is a bit perverse. I'm looking in other people's lives. A couple of people warn him of it. Stella warns him of it. You're just going to get nothing but trouble. Trouble's coming your way. You keep doing this. You shouldn't be doing that, because it is ethically wrong in a lot of ways to be peering into other people's lives. He does justify it by saying, if my windows are open, people are welcome to looking at my apartment, so that means I can look in other people's apartments. But you are looking closely at people's lives, like Miss Lonely Hearts, which gets dark as other characters, and we can go through other characters and keep going, but it's that great quality of that moral ambiguity. Should he be doing this?
Exactly. Now,
But real quick, because he's creating assumptions and inferences of these characters that could not be true.
Exactly. And so now to Miss Torso, who is the dancer across the street, the young woman who gains most of his attention because she's obviously very attracted to her.
And Doyle's.
Yeah.
How's your wife, Doyle?
He's like,
she's good. She's good.
His mouth drops. Yeah, she's fine. wait, what? Who? My wife? So Miss Torso represents what Jeff could never pursue if he's married. If he gets married, especially to Lisa, he'll never be able to pursue like a hot fling or like the young neighbor or a girl he really fancies. He'll never be able to be a single bachelor and be able to date. And that having the ability to, oh, Miss Torso is there, so maybe I should just be this bachelor for the rest of my life and just go from woman to woman.
Yeah, Miss Torso, she's the ballet dancer, lives across the second story up, and she's frequently stretching, rehearsing her ballet in tight little outfits. She's always surrounded by, or not always, but sometimes surrounded by rich, handsome suitors.
Yes.
And although Lisa observes and says that she's not in love with any of them.
That's exactly right. So this also ties to the ending with the Miss Torso's boyfriend, because in that dinner party scene, Miss Torso is that's her name.
That's her name, Miss Torso,
in this movie. She's got these male suitors, and Jeff's like, "Oh, which one was she gonna choose?" He thinks that she's like trying to court the men, but Lisa understands she's trying to fend them off, and she's doing the hardest job a woman can do, and that's keep the tame lions or keep
the wolves away.
Keep the wolves away.
Like one kisses her,
yes.
And when it's interesting when Jeff sees the man grab her and kiss her, he's like, "Oh, he's chosen one. She's chosen one." Yeah. She's like, "What are you talking about?" Because he kissed her without consent.
Yes.
And then she kind of gave him a little pick, then walked him back to the apartment. Yeah.
And also, he said it looked like Lisa's apartment, and then Lisa says she's not in love with any of them. And then Jeff says, "How can you tell that?" And she goes, "You said it looked like my apartment, right?" What she's implying is that at her home, she's always dealing with male suitors. You know what I mean? You can imagine that Lisa's apartment, when she has a party or a social event, the guys are just like Miss Torso's guys at that dinner. They're courting her. They're like wolves, like taking their turns trying to court her, and she's always keeping them at bay. She doesn't love any of them because the person she loves, she goes to his apartment to take care of him, and that's Jeff. So it shows that she knows that the dancer does not love any of these men. It also because at the end of the film we get her boyfriend or her husband, we could assume, comes home from war, and he's this short soldier. He's kind of meek looking, and you're like, whoa, that girl is dating this guy. But then it reflects Jeff and Lisa. Jeff has an insecurity about Lisa being too perfect, too beautiful, too successful, too intelligent for him. And so the dancer and her boyfriend reflect Jeff and Lisa perfectly.
And that's because, Jeff's constantly making inferences, coming to conclusions without enough evidence, just based off assumption. He needs to get off his jump to conclusion mat sometimes, like Anthony over there. And then we have Miss Lonely Hearts. Yes. She's the tenant that lives on the first floor across from the courtyard. Now, Jeff makes up neighbors for all of his neighbors. Makes up names. Miss Lonely Hearts, she earns hers because she's a middle-aged single woman who is desperate for love and constantly striking out. There's that tragic scene, it's really sad, where she play acts a date, like welcoming a date into her apartment, lighting candles, pouring wine, taking off their hat, putting it on top of the radio, going and having a glass of wine, pouring it with them, and then she breaks down sobbing. So there's even a night where she tries and almost commits suicide by taking a bunch of pills, but the beautiful music of the songwriter across the courtyard stops her from taking the pills, which leads to a connection later on. Now, this is a character that clearly reflects our main characters, Jeff and Lisa, in very different ways, because Lisa, you can see, obviously is in love with Jeff. And Jeff, you can see he could end up like Miss Lonely Hearts. He could be cynical of love and cynical of relationships and marriage his whole life and end up an old 65, 70-year-old man lonely by himself, wishing he had made different decisions
He's
in
pushing
his life.
65.
Even though he's called young, a long guy.
Young man. She's a young woman.
He's 46 in this
young
movie.
Man.
Fucking James Stewart's 46 years old in this movie with gray hair. Everyone's like, "Oh, you're a young guy. You're a young strapping lad." What are you talking about?
He's older than you, Stella.
He's turning gray and his skin's gray, so old. But Jeff could end up like this. Lisa probably won't because she has so many suitors, but that doesn't mean just because on the surface she would have a husband, doesn't mean her heart wouldn't be empty.
Yeah, you could say that the guy that she does have over for dinner, Miss Lonely Hearts, and he makes a move on her and makes her extremely uncomfortable, and then she slaps him. He's trying to kiss her. She slaps him and kicks him out of her apartment. You could say that's another wolf, a man wolf, just like the dancer's dealing with. And absolutely, you can imagine that Lisa's had to deal with men like that too. So that
Her whole life.
Yeah, so that character does reflect both characters perfectly.
Yeah, so Lisa, maybe in 20 years, that could be her in a different way. Now, let's talk about some more characters in the neighborhood.
The songwriter.
Okay, songwriter.
We'll save Thorwald for last.
So let me give a brief background. So the songwriter-musician, he lives in the top floor apartment across the courtyard from Jeff to the right. His melodies frequently enchant Lisa and the neighbors and eventually Miss Lonely Heart. The songwriter is single, and he has a lively social life. However, he does seem very depressed and unhappy because he got out of a bad marriage.
Now, the way that songwriter reflects Jeff in this film is the songwriter is always working on one song, and he's trying to play it perfectly and get it down perfect. He's currently working on this tune, and he's always playing that tune. He's never satisfied with it. He's never perfect. He's constantly chasing the perfection to nail this song. And this reflects Jeff he thinks that Lisa is too perfect, and perfection is something he doesn't want in his life. So it mirrors that perfectly. But then we realize, just like the songwriter realizes, Jeff realizes that Lisa's not perfect. Nobody's perfect. There's no such thing as perfection. And he's beginning to, and through the course of the film, he's beginning to see that Lisa isn't like this perfect elitist socialite from Park Avenue. She has very similar qualities to Jeff that he didn't realize. So he was always rejecting the perfection, whereas the songwriter was trying to chase perfection. And then the songwriter ends up just accepting his song for what it is. And then we have, no one really talks about the other married couple.
The woman on the fire escape.
Yeah, the fire escape and her husband. What that symbolizes.
Well, real quick, just a background on who they are.
Yeah.
So consistently throughout the film, they are seen sleeping on a mattress on their balcony. You can assume, and on the fire escape, you can assume it's because it's so hot outside.
Yeah.
It's so hot and stuffy inside the
They're
apartment.
on the top floor.
Yeah, they're on the top floor.
Yeah.
It must be smoking hot in that
Sweltering.
apartment. And so they sleep outside on the fire escape in the mattress, except for that one night where it rains on them. And it's a very comical scene where they have to hurry up and try to squeeze their mattress back inside the window. They're getting covered in rain, and the husband falls through the window, which was an accident, but Hitchcock kept it in the film because it was so funny. And also, this is the woman who owns the dog.
Yes.
It's that really sweet, cute dog that she pushes down and slides down the basket with the rope to the bottom floor to the courtyard to do its business, and then she brings it back up with the rope. Unfortunately, that dog bites the dust halfway through the film.
I don't think you could do that with a dog nowadays.
Sure you
Up
could.
and down that basket. Like
Like that. I thought you meant like kill a dog in a movie. I'm like, it happens all the time. But yeah, dog in a basket, you probably get in trouble for
Yeah,
that.
I don't think that
In America.
I don't think that could get approved nowadays.
Yeah.
But I think they represent a happy couple, because even when they're sleeping on the balcony, they seem to be very happy, and they do laugh a lot. And so I think for Jeff, they represent the possibility of a happy marriage. They don't seem to have much, but they seem to really enjoy each other's company. And then we finally have our last two characters.
Mr. Thorwald and Mrs. Thorwald. Well, now Mr. Thorwald, Lars Thorwald, he is a wholesale costume jeweler. It's what he does for a living. Him and his wife, they've lived in the West Village apartment for the past 6 months. And
He's a jewelry salesman.
yeah, that's what I said.
You said jeweler.
Jeweler.
Jewelry salesman.
Wholesale costume jewelry salesman. He
Yeah.
peddles wholesale costume jewelry. Mrs. Thorwald appears only on screen through the binoculars and camera lens of Jeff. She's always in bed, but her spirit always seems quite healthy and lively. She's always nagging her husband, Mr. Thorwald. She exits the film within the first act, supposedly going on a trip upstate, being put on a train by her husband. However, Jeff has other theories of what happened to Mrs. Thorwald.
And now, before we even get into the plot, this couple represents another one of Jeff's fears. He tells his boss, he's like, "What do you expect me to come home to a nagging wife?" And the bickering of the married couple, the Thorwalds, is something he fears. That if he gets married, he would feel trapped, and he and his wife would have endless bickering and arguing, and there would be no happiness at all. So they represent another one of his fears of marriage.
Good point. We also have a couple other characters. Of course, Detective Doyle. During World War II, Jeff and Doyle spent 3 years on a plane together. Doyle was the pilot. Jeff was the photographer. Now, Doyle has become a detective, and Jeff calls him in for his unofficial opinion on the Thorwald case. Doyle is pretty cynical and not afraid to stand up to his old friend. He frequently challenges and mocks Jeff's obsession with his neighbors, but does not care about Jeff and to have the capacity to admit when he is wrong. Of course, we have Lisa. Lisa, who has a wonderful introduction.
One of the best entrances ever in film.
Princess Grace Kelly, who unfortunately retired from acting a few years after this film's release to become the Princess of Monaco, which I guess isn't a bad trade, but man, she was one of the best actresses alive, and so classy and beautiful and gorgeous. And like Anthony said, Jeff describes Lisa as being too perfect multiple times. Like when she brings over dinner and he's like, it's perfect. I mean, it's like it always is.
And he complained.
He's disappointed at the perfection because he
yeah.
can't live up to it.
And before that, he complained about lobster dinners to his boss. So, like, and on top of that, I think that Grace Kelly's entrance in this film is really one of the best ever. And Jeff's asleep, and then we see a shadow approaching him. And it being a Hitchcock film, you might think it's something nefarious is going to happen. But then it cuts to this really great, beautiful, soft close-up of Grace Kelly looking right into the camera. And she slowly moves towards us, like this effervescent quality to her, like an elegance, and it's a dreamlike quality. And then it cuts to a two-shot of her kissing him to wake him up. And then he actually went slow motion and dropped the frame rate down in the edit for this. And then you see that choppiness, the choppy slow motion. It's just like a second and a half of a shot, but it creates this mystique about Lisa. And my God, it's just such an amazing way to introduce a person in a film.
And she's such a great character because just like all of his neighbors who Jeff has assumptions about, doesn't understand completely because he's looking at them through a biased perspective through his own lens, he views Lisa in the same way. Of course, he cares about Lisa very much. She's so gorgeous and sophisticated. She's that whole Manhattan, ritzy Upper East Side thing. She has impeccable taste in clothing, food, shoes. She's always up to the latest trend. She has on an $1,100 dress just to come say hi to him, have dinner with him. But despite this polished, beautiful, pristine, sophisticated exterior, she's very rebellious. And she's not afraid to get her hands dirty. You know, she crawls out the window. She climbs up windows multiple times. She climbs up the ladder. That's a dangerous stunt to climb up the ladder, go on a fire escape, then go into another window just to try to solve this mystery. So I think throughout the course of the film, which is just a couple of days in Jeff's life, he gets a completely different perspective on Lisa, who he thought, she's too good for me. I don't want to be a part of that Upper East Side sophisticated lifestyle. I don't want to go to the dinner parties and all that.
I won't fit in.
And yeah, like I'm not going to fit in. I don't want a part of that. She's not exactly what he thinks either. She's got so much more to her than just the surface of what he's been looking at.
Yeah. I would really love to break down the gender stereotypes of this film and actually how Hitchcock and his writers subvert them.
Oh, that's really interesting.
In this movie.
That's really interesting.
So now I watched this film in theaters last week, and I think that a lot of people suffer from always viewing old films from a contemporary lens. And there are films that have gender stereotypes in the worst way possible. And yeah, there's a way you can look at those and still enjoy the film, but also, yeah, it's good to critique these things. And obviously films and stories have gotten much better with gender norms. But first of all, this was made a very long time ago. But on top of that, I think that some people, not everyone, but I think that some people, it's more of a knee-jerk thing where if they see a stereotype, they reject it in the film. And Rear Window is an example of that. When I watched it in theaters, I heard audible sighs and moans in the theater when Grace Kelly went to make him dinner and when he told Stella to make him a sandwich. Now, first of all, the guy's in a wheelchair in a body cast. With Stella, he basically orders Stella to do it, but they have this sarcastic back and forth. They talk to each other like brother and sister. So actually, I think it makes sense for him to be like, hey, make me a sandwich. It's a sarcasm way of speaking to her because they have that manner about both of them. She's a wise ass to him just as much as he's a wise ass to her. And on top of that, Grace Kelly, her Lisa, is so sweet. I honestly, there's nothing wrong with a woman wanting to take care of her man every once in a while. There's nothing wrong with a woman making a meal for her boyfriend or her husband. It's totally fine. And I think that some people, when they watch movies like this, I've seen blowback of this film, of criticism of it being bad stereotypes. But first of all, let me just say, there's nothing wrong with a woman wanting to make a nice meal for her husband or her boyfriend. Agreed?
Totally agree. It happens often, and it's the best.
Yeah,
And
it's awesome.
It's reciprocated.
Yes, exactly. It's absolutely reciprocated. There's nothing wrong with it. People need to get past this notion of when they see a woman making a meal in a movie. Oh my God, she's cooking dinner for a man. This is so horrible. Guys, chill out. But on top of that, critics of this movie in that regard actually look at this movie in a completely wrong light, because this movie actually subverts all of the gender stereotypes in this film. Like we were saying, Jeff, he's afraid of marriage. He looks at women as objects. If you look at the neighbors, what's he do with the names of the neighbors? He names the woman neighbors personality traits. Miss Lonely Hearts, Miss Torso, and he objectifies them. With the men, he calls them by their professions. So he's putting men on a higher pedestal than women, right? He calls the songwriter the songwriter. He calls Thorwald the salesman. So he's already has this sexist attitude towards women. On top of that, he thinks marriage is going to be a curse for him. He thinks that marriage is going to be a trap for him. He doesn't want to be bogged down by a woman. He thinks that when he sees a couple arguing, it's the woman's fault. He says wives nag. He always blames the woman for all the problems that could happen in a marriage, the hypotheticals. And all these reasons he doesn't want to get married, it's the woman's to blame. And he thinks that he's a man's man. He lives an adventurous life. He takes risks. He's daring. He puts his life on the line for his job. That's what causes injury. He's free. He thinks, he's a man. He's free. He makes his own decisions. He's in control of his life. That's why he doesn't want a woman in his life. He doesn't want to be controlled. He thinks that a marriage would end up stifling him and confining him and restricting him, just like the cast in the wheelchair. But that's not true about marriage. But he thinks that a woman like Lisa will control him and make him do things he doesn't want to do. That's why he's so, honestly, over the top when he talks about their differences. He trivializes it. He gets to the point where it's like, what if I drive up to a Park Avenue party in a Jeep and go to a fashion event wearing like camo boots? It's like he would never do that, but he's going over the top to push Lisa away. And he's, like you said, looking at her through the lens of his camera, his perspective. He's not understanding who she is. He thinks that she's only about fashion, only about girly things, only about elegance, and only about aristocracy and elitism and fancy parties and nice clothing. He doesn't understand that she actually is just as daring as he is. She puts her life at risk multiple times in this film. So Lisa actually defies all of the gender stereotypes. And what happens with the cast again? Because he's confined to his cast and wheelchair, he can't help Lisa when she's in danger. When she's in Thorwald's apartment and he finds her, all he can do is desperately beg Stella for help, of asking her what to do. So all of the masculinity that he has, all of these traits of a real man that he thinks he possesses are stripped away from him. They're gone. He can't help. He can't use his power. He can't use his adventurous nature. He can't take a risk. He's confined to this chair, and it's all up to Lisa. And Lisa, time and time again, proves that she's just as daring and brave and courageous as he is. And on top of that, you break this down to the end of the film. After Lisa basically saves the day, solves the case, and really gets the main piece of evidence, what happens at the final shot of the movie? So we got Jeff. He's sitting in his wheelchair. He's got 2 casts on his leg, but he's happy.
He's looking out. He's looking the other way of the window.
Yeah, he's not looking at the window. He's not focused on other people. He looks like he's content. He's sleeping like a happy baby. And then the camera pans over to Lisa. She's not wearing a dress. She's wearing jeans. She's now wearing the pants in the relationship. She's got the power, and he's not. It's not, you could say, relinquished all of his power. It's been taken away from him with the injuries, but he's accepted Lisa in his life. And then, but I like the wardrobe, because Lisa's wearing blue jeans, showing that she's wearing the pants in the relationship, but then she's got a really lovely blouse on, showcasing that, she still has that in her. She loves fashion, and she loves girly things, and she's reading a novel. But when she noticed that he's out cold, she takes out a fashion magazine.
Yeah, it's like an adventure traveling book.
Yes.
And then she switches to a bizarre fashion magazine.
Exactly. And so ultimately, the whole point of the film is to show that viewing women and men in these lenses objectively isn't correct, because Jeff thinks that women are passive and men are active. But they actually turn that on its head. They turn Jeff into the passive character who can't do anything, and they show that Lisa is the active person, but she's the one actively doing things in the movie.
The most action that Jeff can take is he can call Thorwald.
Exactly.
That's pretty much the only action he can do. Plus, connecting that to marriage. Jeff, it's talked about multiple times with Stella how he's not ready for marriage. He doesn't want to marry Lisa because she's just too perfect for me. And Stella's like, you're an idiot. You should marry that girl. While you're still young. He's not that young. But while you're still young, marry that girl. And Stella has so much great wisdom where he's like, I'm just not ready for marriage or commitment. She says, every man's ready for marriage when the right girl comes along. And then she says, when a man and a woman see each other and like each other, they ought to come together. Wham! Like a couple of taxis on Broadway. Not sit around analyzing each other like two specimen in a bottle, which makes a lot of sense because that's what Jeff does. He's obsessed with overanalyzing every little detail, and he always consistently just looks at the surface of everything versus just letting it go. Let's just see what happens, even though that's ironically how he lives his life. His philosophy is just doing whatever, going on adventures, going around the world, but he does that everywhere except for in his own home, in his own personal life.
He does, because he's a photographer, he judges people based upon their appearances and their actions from an outsider's perspective.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. I think being a photographer detaches him from people's personalities, from relationships. It just lets him only see or care what's on the surface, and he thinks that everything about somebody is the surface.
Rather than getting to know that person or letting them show him who they really are, which Lisa in this film shows him that she's just as powerful and daring as he could ever be.
Great point.
Because, her climbing up the window is the same as him standing in front of two race cars to take a cool photograph, putting their life at risk for something to achieve something.
It's a great photograph.
It's a great photograph. It's fantastic. So I think not everybody again, but I think that there are people that they get so caught up in obsessing about, this old movie portrayed man and woman in such unfair ways. They're not understanding what the context and they're not understanding what the subtext of the movie is. And they're not understanding what the point of these characters is and what the story's actually doing. And so I think that some people, they just get so bogged down and they see something they don't like, they're not open to understanding what the film is.
And also, Jeff's not a great guy.
Yeah.
Let's not act like Jeff's an angel. He's a perfect man. He's got a lot of flaws. He's very sarcastic, which is funny and witty, but to a point, sometimes he takes it too far. Multiple times with Lisa, sometimes with Stella, but Lisa tells us to shut up multiple times. He's an asshole sometimes. Yeah. And again, that moral quality of should he be looking in other people's apartments, this voyeuristic nature of just being curious about what's going on, the happenings of everything. He thinks he sees everything in his apartment. He doesn't sleep in the bed anymore. That's why his back's always so knotted. His eyes are so red and puffy, like Stella says. She keeps telling you, yes, don't sleep in that chair. He keeps falling asleep in his wheelchair because he's obsessed with looking outside of his window. And it's a great protagonist to follow because we see everything through his perspective, but we also see things that he misses, making him an unreliable narrator at times that we think maybe there isn't actually a murder going on. Like him thinks he sees everything that goes on, all the happenings of the complex, of the courtyard, and he's starting to suspect what happened to Thorwald's wife while the windows closed up, the blinds closed. He doesn't see that a woman left the apartments at 6 a.m. because he fell asleep watching the apartments. So he misses things that lead to him.
Oh, that must have been when I fell asleep.
Kind of an unreliable narrator. And again, it adds to the fact of why is he even doing this? Why is he obsessed with watching people? It's because he's got to have action. He's going crazy. He's going stir crazy. He's getting a little cabin fever, but also he's obsessed with images.
And it's also he's deeply insecure. And because of his powerlessness, that's made him insecure. And they visually showed his powerlessness really well twice. So first, when he's getting the massage with Stella, and Stella's giving him a massage, and the way they framed it is Jimmy Stewart's head is at the bottom of the frame, and Stella rises above the frame over him.
Aggressive massage.
Very aggressive. But if you look at the screenplay actually describes it very specifically as Jeff's head is buried in the pillow on the bottom of the frame, and then Stella towers over him. So again, with that framing, they're showing the powerlessness of Jeff And then another sequence of powerlessness is with Lisa, where she's broaching the topic of marriage. Now, what happens is they're both drinking wine, and they're sitting pretty far away from each other. He's in his wheelchair. She's to the right of the frame, and then there's a warm sunset behind them. This is one of the shots I mentioned where Hitchcock did the reverse to show us the window behind. And what happens is Lisa, when she starts bringing up marriage, she actually scoots close to him, basically cornering him in the frame. And she's also much higher than him. So he's cornered and powerless once again. And in between them is the window of the newlyweds in the background, right in the center of them, showing his powerlessness, his insecurity, and his fear. And he's so afraid of talking about the subject that he barely responds, basically brushes off the topic entirely. And so I think that because he's powerless and because he's so afraid, he can't help but focus on the other people because he's afraid to look at himself.
Plus, there are other sequences where Hitchcock shows how powerless Jeff is, specifically with Doyle, the detective, played by Wendell Corey, who's a pretty tall guy. Wendell Corey's got to be over 6 feet, easy, very imposing figure, constantly in every one of their scenes for the most part. Sometimes Doyle's sitting down, but generally he's standing up, walking around, and he's very imposing in the entire scene, standing high above over Jeff the entire time. Jeff is in his wheelchair, and Doyle constantly stands up to Jeff. He mocks Jeff. He calls Jeff crazy a few times. He's very dismissive. He does look into things. He does look into the evidence, but he gathers a lot of evidence against the case. And this is a great example of Alfred Hitchcock just manipulating us as an audience member. Because I remember the first time I saw Rear Window, I was dying to find out the truth.
If he was wrong or right.
Dying to find out. And at times you're like, wait, is Jeff going crazy? Is there really a murder going on? Because Doyle uncovers all this evidence. Doyle finds out that, like the audience saw, a woman dressed in black leaving the Thorwald's apartments at 6 a.m., which Jeff was asleep for. He tracked down the case. Which got delivered and picked up by Mrs. Thorwald. He tracked down the train that apparently Thorwald put his wife on. One ticket to go that Thorwald's wife got put on. Even though there was information given to him from the superintendent, he still has evidence of eyewitnesses seeing a woman, didn't know that it wasn't Mrs. Thorwald, but leaving the apartment.
Also, the case was filled with dresses.
Yeah, exactly.
Not body parts.
Yeah, not body parts. And why would you tie a case with rope? Well, because the lock's broken. And it makes total sense. So Doyle's a great character, and Hitchcock does a brilliant job with him to manipulate the audience to say maybe Jeff isn't right. Maybe there wasn't actually a murder committed.
There's the telegram saying that she got into the town successfully. They also did with the camera work a great way of making you not trust Jeff as well. So when he's sharing scenes with other characters, when the characters move around the scenes, whether it be Stella, Lisa, or the detective. I'm sorry, what's his name?
Doyle.
Well, Doyle rules. The camera from Burke and Hitchcock, they always follow the actions of the other actor. We're always moving with them, tracking down with them, up and down, left and right. And so in a way, Hitchcock's connecting the audience to the other characters. And oftentimes this is when they're trying to disprove him wrong. And so rather than keeping the camera static, I mean, he could have shot them wide and let the characters move around the frame, which he did in many of his films. I mean, that was a very common filming technique. Not everyone was tracking the actors with precision. It was actually pretty rare back then. It's something that David Fincher has made famous, but Hitchcock really started doing that with all of his films. He could have shot these scenes wide and let the characters move around the frame. But instead, he chose to pretty much go with mediums, and whatever movement the characters made, he had the cameraman follow perfectly. And so that, in a way, connects the audience to the other characters, and it disconnects them from Jeff. So in a way, where when he does that and they're telling their opinions, the audience is more likely to trust what they're saying as opposed to Jeff's ideas.
Plus, there are more patterns in this film. The main pattern in this movie connects the camera and the characters specifically with Jeff. So we have the main pattern is Jeff is watching someone in the neighborhood. He's watching someone through it, and he assesses it in his own inferences. He makes his own inferences about what's going on. The camera sees what he sees. We see what he sees, whether it's through binoculars, through the telephoto lens of his camera, or just through his naked eye. He thinks he sees everything. We also see
That is my curse.
we also see everything from Jeff's perspective through his window or binoculars or camera lens. However, this pattern starts to get broken up about halfway through the movie, which is it's very consistent for the first act. And then it gets broken up. Eventually, first one is we hear a scream and a glass break, but Jeff can't see where it came from. He missed something. We missed something. And so by the time he gets out, looking out the window, the blinds are shut at the Thorwald's apartment. Everyone's kind of asleep. It's a quiet night. He can't see where it came from, what the noise was, so he missed something important. Even though this is before he thought there was a murder
He didn't know
happening.
what to suspect.
Yeah,
at
but he's
all.
like, oh, that was interesting. That was unique. What was that? I missed something.
I've been watching them for weeks, and then finally something interesting happened, and I wasn't looking.
So that's something that we're not watching the neighborhood with Jeff, and Jeff misses something. That's a breakup of the pattern of him watching and then reacting. And then Jeff misses seeing the woman leaving Thorwald's apartment, but we don't miss it. It's that great pan where we see it happening, then Hitchcock pans to the left, and Jeff's asleep.
Yeah.
And then we also, another time where this pattern's disrupted, is we hear a scream and the lady crying, and this is when we find out the dog has been killed. And then all Jeff can do is get out there and react to see what happened. He missed it happening. He didn't see the dog get strangled and its neck get broken. He wasn't looking out the window. The pattern gets broken again where he's not watching, not following, not making inferences. And because he didn't see it, he can't make any assumptions based despite what's inside of his gut, the gut feeling that it was Thorwald, because we get that great shot of a pretty good deduction where every neighbor came out to look except for who? Thorwald's in his dark, no light, unlit apartment, just smoking a cigarette. We just see the red burning of his embers from his cigarettes. But also, this is a great scene where a pattern's broken, where we're only looking through lenses, binoculars, or naked eye perspective. Mm-hmm. When the dog gets strangled, we see all the neighbors, their perspectives, but the camera's in the courtyard now. We're getting these closer shots, not from the perspective in the apartments, but in the courtyard of all the neighbors who all seem to be distraught for the most part, but eventually go off to their regular scheduled programming.
Great point. He does put the camera there. You're right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's the only time really
all the separate shots of each person.
The perspectives changed. It's really the only time.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Yeah, man.
And the sound design, speaking of all those screams and glass breaks, the sound design of this movie is absolutely phenomenal. And in a theater, it was incredible. They did an amazing job of they really make you feel like you're in the middle of the city. That you're like in an apartment complex in New York City. You are constantly hearing cars driving by, dogs barking, people shouting, horns honking. You just hear the bustle of the city at all times. And it's especially in the first, 10 minutes. You hear music, people playing the radio. There's that sculptist, the woman with the dog. She's also a sculptor. Well, no, not with the dog. Different lady. Woman. And she's making these funny sculptures. What's that one? It's Hunger. I love the sound design of this movie. And one of my favorite moments is of sound design is the flashing of the cameras at the end when Thorwald's approaching him. Just those snaps and the breaks of the bulb inside of the bulb. I love that sound design. But what's so cool about the set is they actually did, and you see in the alley, the thing that really helps sell the set is being able to see the bar in that little nook, the back left corner of the apartment complex where people walk in and out. You see the bar with patrons inside the bar, and you see cars and pedestrians walking by that street. And that really helps the illusion of this being a real apartment complex. And I'm sure when people saw this back in the day, they thought it was real. I'm sure it fooled everybody. But those things really help with the depth. Seeing not just a bar entrance, but seeing people in the bar. The depth is so much that you're seeing multiple people seated inside that restaurant, which helps so much. And then seeing what are actual cars. And at first, they were driving these cars. The first times they filmed it, they were actually driving these cars down the street to pass through that opening. But they kept finding that everybody on set kept getting dizzy and nauseous.
Oh, because they're inside a soundstage.
And what happened was because they're in a closed set with car exhausts, spraying fumes everywhere. I'm sure exhausts were really bad back then.
Yeah, they are.
So then
when you see a car that drives past that was like in
black
1950s,
smoke.
you could smell that a mile away.
Yeah, exactly. So what they ended up doing was they opened all the windows and doors and they aired it out. But then they were like, okay, we can't drive the cars, so what do we do? Hitchcock still really wanted real cars. He didn't want to make fake prop cars. So he had his PA team. They production assistants ended up pushing the cars themselves. So they just put the cars in neutral, and they went on the left side of each car where the doors are, and they pushed the vehicles past the opening that way.
It's pretty funny.
Which is great. You can imagine all the working parts. It's like a play. All the working parts behind the walls of the set. Imagine all the people working right there.
You're right. That's really what sells it, because this feels like this small little world, this mini world that Hitchcock created that we're comfortable in. We feel so safe in because we're watching everything happening. And that little nook of action of a city sells it so much, whether it's the hose, the water being sprayed, kids running around, passing by. It just adds so much to the imagination, but also makes us, it's so tight, this little alley.
Yeah.
It makes us feel safe in this confined space of this courtyard in this apartment. It makes you not want people to leave. Like when characters are leaving the apartments and going left or right past that little nook, that little alleyway, you wonder, where do they go? Where's Thorwald going? Where'd the truck go with the package?
Then you're in Jeff's shoes.
Yeah, and we're stuck. We can't see anything, and that really adds to the quality where as long as the action's taking place in the apartment complex, I feel happy and I feel safe. But when it's leaving that, I feel uncomfortable in a great way, and it's great storytelling.
It's the mystery of, like, you don't know what's going to happen, and Jeff can't do anything about it. All he can do is sit there. And I love how they also use that to, when we're doing those telephoto lenses of whether it be Thorwald walking away or Stella or Lisa passing by. Because if it was a closed set and they didn't have that opening with the city, it would have felt like a set. That little alleyway opens up the set to our minds and imaginations.
There's still so much to talk about with Rear Window, but we got to take a break. We got to go to our intermission, everybody. But we'll get back. It's so much more interesting analysis and details and behind-the-scenes facts about this masterpiece. But before we continue, the best way to support Raiders of the Lost Podcast is to become a patron today at patreon.com/Raiders of the Lost Podcast. Patreon is essential to our show's growth as well as maintaining it every single week. Patrons get access to weekly bonus episodes of the show as well as the ad-free version of every single episode. Plus, you get access to our Discord. Patreon helps us do the show full-time, so thank you so much to our subscribers on Patreon, past, present, and future. Sign up today at patreon.com/Raiders of the Lost Podcast. Another great way to support the show is to leave those 5-star ratings and reviews on Spotify and Apple. These ratings help us get seen by new listeners on the platforms, Spotify, Apple, etc. They help us chart on the podcast charts, add reputability. I love to read out the 5-star written reviews on Apple, which I'll get to one in just a minute. And at 5,000 Apple ratings, I'm getting a tattoo of Anthony's choice somewhere on my body. Hopefully it's not embarrassing.
It'll be Thorwald.
But we got to get a lot more ratings on Apple for that. We're only about 2,000. We need to get 5,000 for that, so it could take a little while. Let's get those numbers up,
Needs
everybody.
to be at least 3 times.
We need
as
those
many
numbers,
ratings.
everybody. And another great way to support our show is just share us. Word of mouth is the best way for a podcast to grow. So organic growth is essential to us. Tell everyone you know about Raiders of the Lost Podcast. If you know anyone that loves classic films, love Hitchcock, or loves Rear Window, send them this episode. Tell everyone in your life who loves movies about us.
Of course, this episode is sponsored by our friends at movieposters.com, the #1 place to get your posters online today. Be sure to use our promo code Raiders10 right now at movieposters.com to get 10% off your order immediately. They have a huge selection of pretty much every movie and TV show imaginable in their poster library, as well as all sorts of sizes, framing, and even backlighting for your poster needs. They have a ton of classic movie posters. So if you love the classics, if you love Hitchcock movies like Rear Window, they have a huge selection of all these amazing old Hollywood movies. They have original prints. They have alternate prints, the famous ones, whatever you can imagine. They got you covered in their library. Everything from your favorite Vertigo, Rear Window, Psycho, favorite Hitchcock movie, all the way to your favorite modern-day blockbuster. They got you covered. Incredible quality. They look amazing. They're very affordable, and even more affordable when you use our promo code Raiders10 right now at movieposters.com. That gets you 10% off your order right now.
All right, let's get into our intermission, Anthony. Should we start with Framed?
Of course.
So we've been doing Framed to start our intermission off lately. It's been a lot of fun. The last one was way too easy. It was Oppenheimer.
Yeah.
And
that was
just a no-brainer. All right, we have a pretty interesting one. So Framed today, it looks like we have an abandoned industrial warehouse or something with a character hiding against a wall
And two
with
motorcycles.
Two motorcycles. I wonder what this is. Is that Gael Garcia Bernal?
It looks like it could be Ethan Hawke too. I think trying to figure out who the actor is going to throw us off.
You know what? I don't know. There's two people on a motorcycle that's coming through a tunnel that's throwing me off as well. I have no idea. I'm just going to make a wild guess. Requiem for a Dream. Haven't seen that in a while, so maybe nope, that's not it.
I don't know.
All right, now we have a dog outside of a raining industrial lot. Again, there's a trailer with a light on, and it looks like a man standing in the rain looking at the dog that's barking at him. Maybe looks like he's about to break.
Shouldn't have talked shit about it being easy last time. This one's hard.
This looks familiar, but oh man, I still don't know. I don't know. I'm skipping this one.
I think this is Tim Robbins or.
Okay. Oh, it's all right. I'm on the next image. Are you on number 3?
I'm gonna say, hold on. What's this movie called?
Are you going for Tim Robbins?
I'm going for Tim Robbins. I'm gonna say Jacob's Ladder. Nope.
That is incorrect. All right. Next image. We have Emil Hirsch.
Oh, it's freaking
Emil Hirsch. Juno Temple.
Thomas Hayden Church. I know this. Hold on. It's hold on. I don't want.
What movie is this?
I know it. Hold on.
Thomas Hayden Church, who plays Sandman and Spider-Man. I don't know this one, man.
Hold on.
Come on, you got this.
It's Killer Joe.
Killer Joe.
Hold on. Let me see if I'm right. Killer Joe. Got it.
Killer Joe. Because then, yeah, there's McConaughey.
Yeah.
McConaughey would have been a dead giveaway.
Killer Joe.
And then JGL, they didn't show JGL in here at all.
JGL's in this?
I thought JGL was in Killer Joe.
It's Emil Hirsch.
No, I know it's Emil Hirsch. I'm just saying.
So that guy right there is Emil
I know who. I said Emil Hirsch 4 seconds ago.
Yeah, I know. I'm giving shit.
What's the one that?
JGL's on it.
Oh, yeah, I'm thinking of a different movie that JGL's in with McConaughey.
That was a good one. That was a tough one.
It's a good movie. I've only seen it once.
So yeah, that was Emil Hirsch in that first image.
Sure was. All right, let's move on to our movie quote competition. You ready, Anthony?
Ready.
Okay, this is 2 characters. Calvin? Why do you keep calling me Calvin? Well, that is your name, isn't it? Calvin Klein? It's written all over your underwear.
Calvin. Back to the Future.
Yeah.
Here's mine. Scotty, do you believe that someone out of the past, someone dead, can enter and take possession of a living being?
Scotty. Say it one more time.
Don't worry about Scotty. It'll throw you off. Do you believe that someone out of the past, someone dead, can enter and take possession of a living being?
Scotty.
Scotty.
I don't know.
Hold on, I'll do an impression. Do you believe that someone out of the past, someone dead, can enter and take possession of a living being?
Sounds very familiar, but that didn't help.
Vertigo.
Ah, thanks. That was it. Guess this movie release here, Anthony. The Goonies.
1988.
85.
Oh, wow, that's an old movie.
85.
What year did It's a Wonderful Life come out?
1937.
Close, 39.
Damn.
Close, but no cigar.
So close. Movie pop quiz time, everybody. Anthony, what critically panned 1984 country musical comedy starring Dolly Parton and Sylvester Stallone eventually became a cult classic?
I'm working 9 to 5. I don't know what it's called. I know what you're talking about. I don't know what it's called.
Rhinestone.
Rhinestone.
Working 9 to 5. What a way to make a living.
Dancing. Oh my God.
What?
I've never seen you move like that before.
Feeling it, man. I love Dolly.
The snapping and
I
the
love
shoulders.
Dolly's the best.
All right.
Got some rhythm in me. A little bit, not a lot.
White boy rhythm.
A little bit of rhythm.
How many Hitchcock films was Jimmy Stewart in? And can you name them?
5.
Incorrect.
4.
Yes. Do you know what they are?
Oh my God. Okay. Obviously, Rear Window. Vertigo.
2 for 2.
Fucking.
Oh, that's funny.
I can't remember the name of the one they made after this with them.
What do you describe it?
The title is there's someone. It's like her.
Nope.
Sally's straws.
Okay, you give up.
I give up.
Rope. And then The Man Who Knew Too Much.
Yeah,
the remake.
Yep. Of course.
Not Sally.
Sally Straw was not. Are you sure it's not Sally Straw?
Sally's Straw.
Sally's Straw.
No, it was not one of them. That is incorrect. All right, let's get into our unsubscribes.
Who we got? What do we got? Any haters?
Oh, yeah. We got Boris on Movie News. Didn't notice that I have been subscribed to you guys. Thumbs up. Hold on one sec. James, this is from Joe Neighbors. James, your quote about cleaning the chimney is from Amazing Spider-Man 2, not The Amazing Spider-Man. Unsubscribe.
Damn it.
Incorrect.
We don't have a chimney. Oh.
Jazzy Jeff. On our Rear Window clip I made, unsubscribing till like we get a full episode on it. Guess what?
Whoa.
You're in luck.
Look at
We're
that.
doing it right now.
Ask and you shall receive.
Nathaniel, we're actually doing it right now.
Literally doing
as
it.
we talk. Then we got. I posted a There Will Be Blood little clip saying it was the greatest film of the century.
Mm-hmm.
And then one of our listeners said, I mean, they got a point. They said there's still like 70 years left of the century. We'll see how it ends up. And I replied, I'm not going to wait until I'm 94 to post this clip. And then Connor wrote, if you don't repost this in 77 years, I'm unsubscribing. Man of Steel episode, Derek Green. I also love this movie. Auto-subscribe. Thanks, pal.
You know what's interesting when you think about time like that and something like film? Because movies, if you say There Will Be Blood 2007, 1907 compared to then, how different cinema is. Or even if you went to the 30s and 40s, how different will cinema be in 70 years to now?
Well, it's interesting you say that because There Will Be Blood is actually like a very like traditional way of filmmaking.
No, I know, but still,
But then
aesthetically.
but I would say you want to say the transformation of film by 100 years. Look at something with a ton of CGI in it that shows the evolution of the filmmaking. Technology, yeah.
So it's really the technology that advances in it, as well as the style of storytelling. It's different storytelling still, but it's
I think There Will Be Blood's timeless.
I know it's timeless. I'm just saying. God damn it, Anthony! Can't you just fucking go with it, man?
No,
actually, the way that Paul Thomas Anderson filmed that was like it was a film from 1942.
I'm just saying. Use a different film to compare the difference.
It's different than movies from
it's
it's filmed similarly, but
Yeah.
still completely different.
Right.
Like if that movie came out as it is in 1940, people would be like, "What the fuck? This is crazy." They wouldn't be able to take it. It'd be so incredible. It'd be so advanced.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So I'm thinking in 70 years, what will cinema look like?
No, you're good point.
Not CGI. I mean, like a live action with
point.
real people.
Yeah.
Well, actually,
I'm just saying.
it's not gonna change that much. This fucking guy.
Just saying.
Do you have any more haters besides you?
Jazzy Jeff on the There Will Be Blood clip. When Deuce Bigalow, European Gigolo came out this century, I think not. Unsubscribed. Connor Sullivan, Alien Romulus clip. I posted the practical suit of an alien, and Connor wrote, "Whoa, spoiler! First thing I see on Instagram. Come on, guys, unsubscribed."
Pal, Fede
Yeah.
Alvarez posted it, so
Yeah.
I mean, if
We
direct-
figured, yeah,
if
since
the
he posted it.
director posted it, it's all over the internet. So
Yeah.
I mean,
Sorry, Connor.
sorry, pal. Go after Fede.
Yeah, talk to Fede.
It's been 3 weeks.
We love you though.
It's been 3 weeks.
We love you.
Go see it, bud.
Joe Emerson on 100 Greatest Movies. Guys, Blue Sky Studios made Ice Age. 20th Century Fox distributed. Unsubscribed due to the Blue Sky Studios slander.
20th Century Animation,
This Blue Sky Studios produced it.
but also it's 20. I thought it was 20th Century Animation.
Distributed it. Distributed it.
Distributed.
Jesus.
Okay, I'm wrong.
Hey, Zeus. On our Alien clip, that same one with the practical suit. You guys are telling me that wasn't a real alien human love child hybrid in the movie? Unsubscribed. Disaster movie episode. Zach wrote, John Cusack was a limo driver in 2012, not a pilot. Unsubscribed. Why did I think he flew the plane?
Well, to get on a plane.
Yeah, I thought I don't know
definitely
why.
Because he wears the black and white suit.
Yeah, I don't know why I thought he flew the plane in my head. I remembered it incorrectly. Tim is going to be in LA, and he said, I can't wait to find Anthony at Trader Joe's and tackle him shouting, unsubscribe.
Imagine. Bro, have you ever had the coffee ice cream at Trader Joe's?
Coffee ice cream? Yeah, I think so. I believe
It's
so.
Absolutely incredible.
Yeah, all their ice creams are great.
The coffee one, though.
They're wonderful.
It actually has coffee grounds in it. I've been thinking about it all week, man.
Oh, yeah. I know you
Thinking about it all week.
And then Kenneth Keniff on Alien. Also with that magazine in the space station, another little tidbit, the magazine is actually a porno mag. Unsubbed.
Wait, what space station?
Inside Alien, the Nostromo.
Oh.
Magazine is a porno mag.
In the first Alien.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Alien.
Okay.
That's why I said Alien.
I missed that. I zone Anthony out a lot.
Clearly.
Especially
Obviously.
today. We have a great 5-star written review from the Juan B.
The Juan B?
The Juan B.
Juan B. Nice.
Best movie podcast ever, 5 stars. First episode I heard was super bad, and since then have never stopped listening. I'm always cracking up with the awesome banter. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, pal.
Hey, Juan. Thank you. You're the best, pal. Appreciate it so much. We love to read those written reviews out. Anyone
So
can
sweet.
sign up for Apple and just do that.
I love it.
Or if you have an iPhone, go for it. Anthony, what is your streaming recommendation for this episode?
310 Yuma was just put on Netflix, the new one.
Bitch.
Did you copy me?
You copied me.
I did it first.
Mine is 310 Yuma as well for Netflix.
I did this morning, man.
I did mine this morning
You were
too.
still in bed when I did my
What
top.
are you talking
when
about?
I did my intermission.
I did mine yesterday.
Yesterday?
Yesterday.
I doubt that.
Look at my document creation.
I know you created the document, but you're telling me you did your intermission yesterday.
Some of it yesterday, some of
You've
it
never
today.
done an intermission within a minute of the episode.
What are you
You're
talking about?
We're always delayed by, hold on, I gotta do my intermission.
That happens
Hold on.
twice a year.
That happens-
It happens to you too.
So you're telling me you did your intermission yesterday?
I did some of it yesterday.
So you lied.
I did some
You're
of
a
it
liar.
yesterday.
You're an unreliable narrator. Liar. Liar.
Don't gaslight me, Anthony.
Also, I put the split review up first.
Split review up.
Remember we both put so when we watched Split and on our Discord, we both actually ironically put the same exact review of James McAvoy put on an acting clinic. Both of our letterbox reviews to Split. James says that he did it first, and I said I did mine first. Caleb actually said he has the receipts, and he said I put my review up first.
Caleb you put your review up first.
Yeah. He said
I gotta
did-
see these
he
receipts.
said I posted it first.
He has a screenshot.
Ask Caleb. Yeah.
Screenshot with time.
Caleb says he has the receipts. What do you think? He photoshopped it?
I mean, I'm not saying I don't believe Caleb. I just want to see it. I just want
I believe Caleb. He's a stand-up guy.
He is a stand-up guy. He's a great guy. I just want to
So,
see.
yeah.
I want to see those receipts.
I mean, you have someone who has evidence. You still won't believe it.
Yeah, but you're also
Eyewitness
hyperbolic
testimony.
as fuck. You're saying that every episode we're delayed because I have to do an intermission. That happened once last week.
That's never
Last week
That's
it
not
happened.
happened once.
It happened once
we
last
both, We
week.
both know many times we've been ready to record. Many times we've been ready to record. You're like, hold on, I gotta do my intermission.
You do that shit too all the time.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying you. We're not talking about me. We're talking about you and your intermission.
You do it all the time as
I
well.
never said I didn't. I never said I didn't.
Oh, now you're changing.
But
your
I'm
answer.
saying that you've never done an episode intermission early.
How do
is
you
what
know?
I'm saying.
You don't live my life.
Well,
you're
hold on.
acting just like Jeff.
No.
You're acting
Hold on.
just like
Hold
LB
on.
Jeffries.
Hold on.
You're making assumptions based off looking at someone.
Let me ask you something.
Sure.
Did you lie to me when you said you did your intermission yesterday?
Yes.
Okay, so I can't trust anything you say.
Did lie.
You can't trust anything you say.
I did lie to you because fuck you. That's why.
Nothing you can say can be believed now.
I often, more often than not, do my intermission before filming. Well before filming. Sometimes hours, sometimes days.
I doubt that.
Sometimes days before filming.
You cannot be trusted, man.
2
You
weeks
lied-
ago,
you
I
lied
did.
right to my
2 weeks
face.
ago, I did a bulk intermission. I did 3 intermissions in a row. I bulked them up.
I even put other people's dishes away.
I bulk my intermissions sometimes, man. All right, get out of here.
Oh
How
my
many times
God.
have you done 3 intermissions in a row?
I've never done it,
Exactly.
but I've never lied about doing it.
Yes, you probably have. Well, I've never asked you about it.
All I'm saying is you're a liar. We can't trust you. You lied right to my face.
I did.
You lied just to prove me wrong.
I totally lied.
You know how fucked up that is?
I did my intermission today.
It's so fucked up. You lied just so you can win an argument.
Today, I was like, oh fuck, I forgot to do my intermission.
Thank you.
We weren't delayed because of it. I was eating my eggs, and all I said was, "I'll be ready in a few."
Why didn't you just say that when I asked you?
That's what. Say what?
When I asked you when you did your intermission, why did you say last night?
I said yesterday.
You said it so that you could prove me wrong, is why you said it.
Basically.
Busted, man. Oh my God, you're busted. I got him, guys.
You got me.
It's on the tape.
All right.
What's your streaming correct now that I took 310?
It's 310 to you, man.
Amazing that all that came from 310.
All because of James Mangold. Thanks, James Mangold. Now Anthony and I are never going to talk again.
No, I forgive you for lying. It's okay.
Thanks. I did say I'm sorry.
You did.
I did admit it.
You owned up to it.
I did. All right. Let's get back
Yeah.
into our incredible episode on the masterpiece of Rear Window.
There's a really cool way that Hitchcock directed this movie. Now, like,
Tell us about it.
oh my God. Hold on, let me make it up.
It sounds super cool, Anthony.
Let me make this up.
Okay, I'll be serious.
Just like how Jeff is stuck in his apartment, Hitchcock shot the whole thing from his apartment. And actually, Hitchcock never left the apartment and balcony while he was directing the movie.
Jeff's apartment?
Yes, Jeff's apartment and balcony. So the way they did this was they actually had all of the other actors, the neighbors, wear flesh-colored earpieces so that they could hear Hitchcock's direction without him having to shout across the soundstage. So they were actually using earpieces.
That's pretty cool. There's a lot of famous shots in this movie. I think one of the most iconic has to be when Jeff pulls out his camera. He puts the telephoto lens on.
Oh, yeah.
And we have that incredible reflection looking at it's that great angled shot of the lens, but we can see the apartment's windows from across the courtyard reflected in the lens of Jeff's camera. Now, they tried to do this practically by just reflecting the lens across the courtyard, but it wouldn't work because it's way too far away and the lighting was going to be a nightmare. And obviously the perception and depth would change completely. So what they did to capture this really iconic shot of the apartment reflected in the lens of Jeff's camera was they set up a projection in front of Jimmy Stewart, who had his lens out as a performer with the prop. And then they projected an image of the apartment across the way onto the mat of the projection screen. And then that's how they were able to get a very clear, great reflection of the apartments into the camera lens of Jeff's camera for that iconic shot. And it wasn't a large screen. It was probably like 4x4.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be big.
Of the actual apartment complex. So it's a really clever, practical way to get that brilliant shot.
Because it would have just been honestly like a blur of an image if they did it real. But putting the image that close to the lens to get a good detailed reflection so you can see the windows. It's a genius way to do it and go about that.
And also the music. You talk about the sound design. The music in this movie is great. And I love how it opens with great credits with really upbeat, jazzy music, great drums, sax, all kinds of stuff. It sounds terrific. And the music was composed by Franz Waxman, who did the music for Hitchcock's film Rebecca.
Nice.
As well as the scores for Suspicion and The Paradine Case. Now, the rest of the film, for the majority, does not have much original composition in the background of the film, really, in terms of like an original score. However, the original music throughout the film comes from the neighbors, comes from the apartments, comes from record players, comes from the songwriter and his piano. These are all original tracks that were made and composed by Franz Waxman. And also, the film includes several popular songs such as That's Amore, To See You Is to Love You, and Mona Lisa. And it's just incredible because when you think about the film, we talk about how there's really no musical composition or an original score, really. There's that suite at the opening of the film, but the rest of the film, the music comes from the apartments, which I think is a really fascinating way to do the film.
And also, it's the lack of music. I mean, the most thrilling moment of the film is the third act climax when Thorwald is entering Jeff's apartment. there's no music that plays at all. It's just silence, and it's just sound design of the creaking of the steps outside the door. We get Jeff is watching the bottom crack of the door, and the light in the hallway turns on. And it's like, oh my God, it's like no Country for Old Men.
Turns off.
Turns off. It's like No Country. It's like, oh my God. No, it turns on because Thorwald's backlit, I think, right? No, he turns it off. You're right, he turns it off.
Turns it off.
So it is like No Country, exactly. And then the creaking of the door. Like
I wonder if Hitchcock got inspiration from No Country for Old Men.
from the Coen brothers.
Cormac
He's like, oh, fucking Deacon.
It's a great shot.
But clearly there's the reverse effect. And then I love, like I said, the snapping of the camera, the flashing of the light bulbs, the screwing on the bulbs. The sound design is incredible, but that whole sequence, and it's so thrilling. And I'm telling you, in the theater, I know it's going to happen. This is like my 10th watch of it, but I was just on the edge of my seat waiting for what was going to happen next. And it's just so well crafted. And to do one of the most suspenseful moments in film history without a note of music is so incredible and impressive.
Yeah, I mean, the finale is really great, and even filming that fall of James Stewart falling out the balcony and the window is really great. And so that was done practically with the help of some interesting trickery. So as we know, Stewart, I mean, we've all seen Rear Window at this point. I'm sorry we're going to spoil the ending, but we'll get into more analysis of it all. But
the killer was Miss Torso.
So Stewart's fall from the window was filmed directly from above using the traveling mat technique to create the illusion that the actor falling to a certain injury on the concrete below. The special effect involved filming Stewart falling onto some mattresses and then matting in this shot with one of the backgrounds that had been photographed separately minus the falling actor. It was very seamless. It's really good. Still holds up today, but not saying that everything in Rear Window works still holds up to this day. I think just one shot, it's a bit camp and a bit honky, is the helicopter shot, which is clearly put into the background of the apartments. It has even camera shake on it. It's not perfect, but it is what it is. You kind of accept it.
Back then, they all thought it was probably really there.
Yeah.
It worked for the time. But you're right. Yeah, I mean, even blown up on the big screen was super noticeable, but I was like, oh, man. When I watched it, I was like, oh, man, I love how they did the helicopter.
It's actually kind of cool.
It's so cool.
It's interesting.
One of my favorite shots is also part of Lisa's introduction, and it's after she kisses him and wakes him up, and his room's so dark, and there's no light on at all, and she moves throughout the room, turning on each lamp one by one individually, and all the lamps are this beautiful, warm color. So she's bringing in light to his life. She's bringing in warmth to his life. And so that's just an incredible shot that shows character detail, too.
So did you know that Grace Kelly didn't really know she was being cast in this movie?
I did not.
Well, first of all,
Explain.
by most accounts, everyone was crazy about Grace Kelly. According to James Stewart, everybody just sat around and waited for her to come in the morning so we could just look at her. She was so kind to everybody, so considerate, just great and so beautiful. He also praised her instinctive ability for acting and her complete understanding of the way motion picture acting is carried out. So as you can imagine, she's just an absolute gorgeous, talented woman in real life as on screen. And so for the role of Lisa Fremont, Hitchcock chose Grace Kelly, who had starred in his previous picture, Dial M for Murder.
Awesome one.
Now, while making that film, Hitchcock had discussed Rear Window with Grace Kelly, but had made no mention of the actress starring in it. She was therefore somewhat surprised when, in October 1953, while in New York, she received a call informing her that Hitchcock was expecting her in Los Angeles for wardrobe fittings for Rear Window.
Where are you, Grace?
However, Miss Kelly had been offered the leading role opposite Marlon Brando in Elia Kazan's On the Waterfront, which she was to be shot in New York and was better suited for her plans. Nevertheless, the role of Lisa in Rear Window appealed to her, as did the opportunity of working with Hitchcock again. So she quickly decided to accept the part of Rear Window and turned down On the Waterfront. Ava Marie Saint eventually took Grace Kelly's role in On the Waterfront and won an Academy Award for Best Actress.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
So I'm sure Hitchcock probably was like, oh yeah, you'll do this movie without telling her, and then told her like 3 weeks before production.
Also very ironic. So Raymond Burr, who plays Thorwald, after this film, he ended up getting cast in the famous television role Perry Mason.
Oh, no, cool. That's cool.
He played the most famous PI in in Hollywood for years.
He always looks so familiar.
Yeah, so he was Perry Mason for many years, and even in some TV movies.
Like we talked about, Rear Window is based off a short story called It Had to Be Murder. And so Hitchcock had been planning Rear Window during the filming of Dial M for Murder at Warner Brothers. He had acquired the rights to the short story to the 1942 short story by Cornell Woolrich under the pseudonym William Irish. The story is pretty similar. It concerned an invalid confined to his room who spies on his neighbors and witnesses a murder. Eventually, the killer attempts to shoot the invalid across the yard. However, the invalid manages to protect himself at the last minute by grabbing a bust of Beethoven and using it as a shield. I like how they changed it up quite a lot. And the script was done, like we said, by John Michael Hayes at the suggestion of his agents from Hitchcock. Hitchcock hired him, who was only in his 30s at the time, to write a treatment and the script. He received a fee of $15,000 for the services of the film, had a background of comedy and suspense writing for radio, and he turned out to be a perfect complement to Hitchcock. With his ability to provide strong, credible characterization and witty, sophisticated dialogue, Hayes would subsequently be scriptwriter for Hitchcock's next three pictures: To Catch a Thief, The Trouble with Harry, and The Man Who Knew Too Much. And based off
Sally's
Straw, Anthony, not Sally Straw, Sally's Straw.
So he wrote that one too.
Sally's Straw. And based off the treatment that Hayes wrote, Jimmy Stewart accepted the role of L.B. Jeffries, foregoing a salary, and received instead a percentage of the film's profit.
Oh, I bet he made out on that.
Probably did.
I also love, I guess, I mean, there's so many great moments in this film, but really the true great moment of the movie is the confirmation reveal. When Lisa sneaks into Thorwald's apartment and Jeff is like so nervous and she's going through the apartment and he and Stella are watching, and then she finds the purse in the bedroom. It's empty. And then all of a sudden, Thorwald shows up and Lisa hides somewhere. I'm guessing maybe the bathroom. And then they're like panicking, like, oh, what do we do? Then Thorwald finally finds her and confronts her, and he's yelling at her, and she's trying to probably talk her way out of it, but unsuccessfully. And then Thorwald grabs her, he throws her onto the chair, he starts berating her, and then Jeff and Stella are just like, we don't know what to do, and Jeff's begging, like, what do we do? How do we help her? And he's like shaking with fear, completely helpless and powerless to do anything. And just before it goes too far, thankfully they had called the police earlier. Police showed up, and they start talking about Thorwald. And Lisa, you can imagine what Lisa's probably telling them. And then Thorwald's probably like, I found this woman in my home. She's burglar. She's robbing me. You can imagine what they're saying. But what's great is we don't know what they're saying, which is another great choice by the director to not reveal anything that's said in that room. And then Lisa turns her back to the window and puts her hands behind her back and then points to her finger, and Jeff sees with his telephoto lens that she's got the wedding ring on. She found the wedding ring, and we got the great scope, and it's just like, oh my God, she did it. And then Jeff pans up to Thorwald, who sees the wedding ring that she's pointing to, and then he looks right into camera, right at Jeff, and right at the audience. And then it's like, oh shit! Oh my God, he did do it! It's the best moment of the movie. One of my favorite movie moments ever.
Do you think that that's also a metaphor for maybe Jeff marrying Lisa?
Oh yeah,
Because she
put it on the wedding ring.
Puts a wedding band on.
Yeah, she
on
put
her
it on
hand,
her ring,
on her finger.
I mean, she put it on her wedding finger. Yeah,
Yeah.
That's the ring finger. Yeah, it's a great illusion.
Yeah.
This is why you give the big bucks.
That's
man.
why I always put on, because they're in the situation, and
Yeah.
this is what's finally got Lisa to get a ring on her finger, is trying to catch a murderer with Jeff, rather than just being herself. But it took this much for him to put a ring on her finger. Well, she does it herself.
Yeah.
So I always look at that like it's a metaphor for them being married in the future.
That's a great point.
But it's a great little climax here that leads into the finale, because we, up until this point, like you said, he did it. He definitely did it, because up until this point, there could have been reasoning behind everything. You know, digging around the flower bed first at the opening of the sequence, excuse me, Stella and Lisa, they go down. They want to go in the flower bed because the dog kept digging in there, and the dog got killed. Why the dog got killed? Probably because there's something buried in there. And Lisa's like, yeah, maybe the whole body's in there. But Stella's like, oh, don't be crazy. You'd have to bury them vertically. And you can't do that in the middle of broad daylight or even at night. But there's something probably buried there. And so I always, even though I've seen this movie multiple times and I know nothing's going to be in the flower bed, I still think, oh, what if there's something in the flower bed? And they dig up and there's nothing in there, which leads to them going into the apartment.
Yeah.
But even building up to this, because at this point, Stella and Lisa are on Jeff's side. Even though Doyle isn't completely. Doyle's still curious. He's looking into it. But L.B. Jeffries, man, he's so dead on knowing that Thorwald's a murderer. And up until this point, everyone's disputing him. Stella's calling him crazy. You know, you're going to ask for trouble. You should have your eyes put out with the poker, you know, for looking at other people's apartments. You shouldn't be doing that. Trouble's going to come. Trouble eventually does come. And then Lisa's not on his side for a while. It takes until, you know, Lisa multiple times, like, oh, there was nothing. The woman left the apartment. After Doyle kind of proves them all wrong, she shuts the shutters. And she's like, let's not look out the window anymore for the night. And it's not until, was it the jewelry?
The dog
being murdered? I thought it was the jewelry where she's.
Oh, yeah, it's the jewelry.
Yeah, so the jewelry. So she comes to the apartment, and Jeff tells her that I watched Thorwald across the courtyard, and he pulled out all of the jewelry, all of his wife's jewelry, including the wedding ring, the engagement ring, and the wedding ring, as well as started packing a bag. And it wasn't until this point, and the purse. It wasn't until this point.
Her favorite purse. Yeah.
Lisa didn't believe him until now. And then she says that great line. She's like, tell me everything you saw and tell me what you think it means.
Yeah. She's great. She's like, a woman wouldn't go on vacation or travel without her favorite purse and her jewelry.
And she says that great line, I'll trade you my woman's intuition for a bed for the night.
Yeah, I love how, because he gave her the line of like, can you live out of a suitcase? And she comes in, she's got a little handbag. She's like, how's this for a suitcase? It's got her nightgown and her little slippers in it. It's really cute. Yeah. And I love when Doyle comes and he keeps looking at the nightgown and then to Jeff, the nightgown to Jeff, and then Jeff's like, easy, Doyle.
Yeah, that's a great reflection on Jeff in general and his hypocrisy, because, you know, things were a lot different back then.
Yeah.
And they allude to, you do tell your landlord everything.
Yeah.
Because it was probably uncouth to have someone overnight that wasn't your spouse.
Yeah.
And it was something that, you know, people didn't really do in this
Frowned
part
upon.
of society.
Yeah.
And so she comes to stay over with that overnight bag. It's on the counter, and Doyle looks at it multiple times with a lot of suspicion and also judgment.
Yeah.
And that's when you said Jeff goes,
easy, Doyle.
Easy, Doyle. And this is interesting because, you know, Jeff's doing something uncouth, something he wants to keep secret, and he's trying to tell someone in his apartment not to pry. Meanwhile, he's looking through apartment windows, prying into people's personal lives. So he's very hypocritical, specifically in this point where I want my privacy at this point for this specific thing. However, everyone else, I can look through their windows.
He's trying to get laid.
Listen.
That's a great point.
No, Lisa's not like that, man.
No, yeah, she wouldn't. She would never. She just wants to sleep over.
Lisa wants that wedding ring first.
Yep, 100%.
She wants that ring. Put a ring on it.
So there's a little bit of flack for this movie's conclusion, the big climax. I love it. I love Thorwald. He's moving through Jeff's dark apartment, and Jeff has a bunch of light bulbs, and he starts using the flash on his camera to basically slow down Thorwald. And every time he does the flash, Thorwald's vision goes red, and he adjusts his glasses, and then he stops, and then he approaches again, and then Jeff takes another photo, not a photo, but another flash. Thorwald again adjusts his glasses, and then we get the POV red light fading. It happens 3 times. I think it's awesome. I think it's wonderful. I think some people think it's cringy because it hasn't aged well for like a modern audience. But for me, especially in the theater, it was so thrilling, and I really love it. It's basically Jeff's only way of defending himself, and I love it. And also, I mean, it makes sense. The guy's pupils are dilated in this very dark room, and then you get an extremely bright flash. It would fuck up your vision. So I get that. But again, this was made a long time ago, and I think that some contemporary viewers, they watch that and they think it's cheesy, but I think it works really well. I love it.
I agree. I like it. It's a lot of fun, and I think it still holds up really well. And I like the effect of the blurry eyes with the orange effect, the tinted film.
And I love the phone call that Thorwald, he called after Jeff sends Stella to go bail Lisa out of jail, so he's alone, and then he gets the phone call.
There's no voice.
No voice.
I like the other phone call, too, where he
yeah.
writes the note, what'd you do with her? And then he calls Thorwald up, meet me at the hotel bar. I'll be there in 15 minutes. I'll be looking for you, Thorwald.
I love it.
I have found a rear window trivia quiz question list if you want to answer some questions.
A bunch?
Yeah, so here we go. Here's some Rear Window trivia questions. What does Jimmy Stewart's leg cast say in Rear Window?
Here lie the bones of L.B. Jeffries.
Very good, very good. Again, he's 5 weeks into this cast. One more week to go. Next Wednesday, he gets the cast broken off. Ironically, the cast breaks when he falls down at the end of the film, and both his legs are broken again.
But he's happy about it.
What magazine does L.B. Jeffries shoot photos for?
I don't know.
Life magazine.
Life
magazine. Okay. So James Stewart's name is L.B. Jeffries. What do the initials L.B. stand for in Rear Window for his character?
Lyndon Bruce? I don't know.
Trick question. We never know.
Okay.
We're never told what L.B. stands for.
Great trick question.
You're welcome. All right.
Sounds cool, though.
What is Stella's occupation?
She is a fashionista.
Stella. Not
Stella.
Lisa.
Sorry, Stella. She's a home nurse, a traveling nurse.
Insurance company nurse.
Insurance nurse.
So it's insurance company, obviously. That's why she's like, the insurance company would be a lot happier if you slept on your bed.
When the CEO of General Motors is peeing 10 times a day, they're in trouble.
I knew the collapse was going to happen. Did it collapse? It collapsed. Okay. Let's see something else. How about this? What is the middle name of Lisa Fremont?
Lisa Marie Fremont.
Nope.
Lisa, I don't know.
Carol. Lisa Carol Fremont. It's said a few times in the film. Very, very good. All right.
What magazine is Lisa reading at the end?
Bazaar.
Yeah.
Easy peasy. Okay, so Lisa, when she comes into the film, she's wearing an $1,100 dress. What city does she say the dress was made in?
Paris.
Yes, absolutely correct.
They're wearing it on the runways. It's all the rage.
Mm-hmm. All right,
I think that's her best outfit. It's great.
Now, Lisa, when her and Jeff are having their conversations about marriage, she says, are you ever going to come home?
Mm-hmm.
You know, even though he's home now, this is really the first time in a while he's probably been home for this long. She says, you could have a studio here. What kind of career and what kind of photography does Lisa suggest he could do in New York City?
Fashion photography and portraits.
Yes, sir.
What part of New York does Jeff live in?
Greenwich.
Greenwich Village.
Yeah, Greenwich Village.
Greenwich. Greenwich.
It's pronounced Greenwich.
Greenwich.
Yeah.
Yes.
Amateur hour over there. Haven't you ever been in New York? All right, Anthony. So, the killer in the film is Lars Thorwald.
Yes.
And his missing wife. What was Mrs. Thorwald's first name?
What was Thorwald's first name? Helen.
Nope.
I don't know.
Anna.
What is the name of the restaurant that Lisa has food brought in from?
Oh my gosh. I can't remember the name of the restaurant, but I know where they really got the food.
Where did they get the food from?
So obviously this film was shot in LA at Paramount Studios. Frank and Musso, which is
the steak place?
The famous restaurant in Los Angeles. It's in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, the scene where Rick and Cliff go to meet Pacino, Mr. Schwartz. That's Frank and Musso. It's a famous restaurant in LA. I can't remember what they say in the movie.
It's the 21 Club.
21 Club. So it was actually Hitchcock's favorite restaurant.
Oh, nice.
Frank and Musso. So he got it actually delivered in from there. I liked how they delivered food back then. It was just a guy with a big metal briefcase.
I'm sure it was a little expensive to do that. She could afford it.
All right. What's the first thing that we see Lars Thorwald doing for his wife in the film? Can you remember?
Lars Thorwald, he brings her dinner.
Yes.
Yes.
She's
And dinner in bed.
Always in bed, supposedly sick, according to Jeff.
Yeah.
Even though she's very lively and spry, but he brings her food on a tray.
Yeah.
She takes the flour and throws it at him. Like, get this fucking flour out of here, and then starts to laugh at him.
Yeah.
Okay, and starts accusing him of something because he goes in the other room and makes a phone call.
Yeah. I like how we don't really know the backstory of their tumultuous marriage.
I've always assumed that he was having
An affair with the other woman.
Yeah, an affair or something. That's
Yeah.
wis he was doing those phone calls, and that she was berating him and making fun of him about it.
Yeah.
And clearly their marriage is on the rocks.
Jeff said something alluding to his mistress who he's talking to. He assumed that that Thorwald was talking to his mistress, who ended up, obviously, you can assume is the woman who helped play the part of Mrs. Thorwald.
Yeah, probably. Okay.
Which explains the flower. She's like, you don't love me.
Yeah.
Don't try that.
Okay, so now, Alfred Hitchcock, he has a cameo in a lot of his movies. Where is Alfred Hitchcock's cameo in Rear Window?
He is winding a clock in the singer's apartment. I mean, the songwriter's apartment.
Very good. Very, very good. Let's see what else I can find.
This is fun. I like this.
Let me see. I got one more page. Let me see.
Okay. What is it? What kind of liquor does Lisa pour for Doyle and Jeff?
Brandy.
Burgundy. Brandy.
Brandy.
Yeah. Brandy, yeah.
Yeah.
Snifter. I'm not much of a snifter.
So this scene kind of takes me out of the movie for a little bit because they're constantly swirling the brandy, which is a bit much. And obviously it's from the direction of Hitchcock. It's clearly what he wanted because it's so blatant and aggressive. And I've drank brandy before. I mean, swirl a little bit, but I mean, take it easy. So, and also there's if you notice, there's a continuity error with Doyle's glass. It's very full sometimes, it's almost empty sometimes.
Also, I believe she pours 4 glasses.
Maybe, I can't remember.
I think she pours 4 glasses.
So the brandy scene is, for me, I'm always like, stop doing the swirling. It's easy, guys. Take it easy.
But maybe that's what high society people used to do it like. You know, maybe Hitchcock got that from going to so many parties.
Maybe
people were like smugly did it like that. What kind of brand camera does Jeffries use?
That's a good question. I'm going to say Canon?
Nope. It is an Exacta VX camera with a 400mm kill-fit Fern-Killar 5.6 telephoto lens.
Oh, I don't know how I didn't get that. Wow, how did I not get that? This fucking guy.
Oh man.
Got any more quiz questions?
Yeah, I'm pulling one up right now.
Let's do it, man. Okay, what are the Thorwald's address?
Oh fuck. 12?
No.
1, 2. Something.
125 West
5.
9th Street.
Gotcha. 125. What book is Lisa reading or like pretending to read?
At the end?
Yeah, at the end.
Oh, it's like fucking
It has to do with travel.
it's something to do with another country, right?
Yeah.
Traveling in Baghdad.
Beyond the Himalayas.
The Himalayas.
Trying to show Jeff that she's interested in travel in the world. Then she pulls out Bazaar after that.
That's one of my favorite shots. I always forget how funny the ending of
It's
the
really
movie
funny,
is. Of
yeah.
It's him sitting in the wheelchair asleep, content, and then panning down to two new casts, and then Lisa. It's great stuff.
There's a story that apparently Jimmy Stewart's wife didn't want him to make a movie with Grace Kelly because of how beautiful and desired she was by everyone. And so she was paranoid. And then confirming that Kelly was also a flirty person. And Stewart's wife, Gloria, was on set every day.
That's pretty funny.
Oh, so here's a great fact: the pianist songwriter, he was a real pianist and musician. He actually ended up creating Alvin and the Chipmunks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the music. Yeah,
Yeah.
Great fact. You should have asked that as a question. I would have got that.
Okay.
I knew that.
I knew that. Hold on. Ask it.
Go again.
Ask it.
Go again, man. Go again.
Oh man.
Yeah, I mean, this is a superb film, man. You got anything else besides random questions?
This is the only film where Grace Kelly ever smoked on screen.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I think we're just about done with this
That's
episode now.
That's all the fun. I can't
That's all
find
you
any
got?
more fun facts.
Yeah, there's also this really cool time lapse someone made it's on YouTube. So if you search Rear Window time lapse, someone put together this great film, this great like 3-minute video, and it shows every day and evening in the courtyard. They basically took all the footage from the film, all different voyeuristic shots of us looking in different apartment windows, and they recreated sort of a panoramic shot of the entire courtyard, and it shows everything that every neighbor is doing at the same time versus us just like looking and seeing what they're doing at any given time. So a continuation of day and night of everything all the neighbors are doing. It's really cool. I can't recommend checking it up.
Oh, I want to see that. Send it to me.
I don't want to.
Send me a link to it.
Maybe not.
Please. No, but I love this movie. It's one of my favorites, and it's hard to pick a favorite Hitchcock movie, but I mean, this might be my favorite Hitchcock movie. It's possible.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I really love North by Northwest, and I really love Psycho. I think North by Northwest, it's just so funny and entertaining and adventurous.
I love Vertigo, too.
Yeah, I do really love Rear Window a lot, but I think if I had to pick a favorite, it's probably between North by Northwest and Psycho. I think North by Northwest is just so astounding, and it's just so grand, and the scope's really big.
Great score.
And again, very entertaining and hysterical. But
It's a very funny movie.
yeah, it is really funny.
Yeah.
But Psycho also is just an all-time.
You gotta watch Dial M for Murder.
I haven't seen it.
It's amazing.
I haven't seen it.
It's so good.
Keep meaning to watch
So
it.
good.
Grace Kelly's in it.
She is.
She's in it.
Now watch it.
Dude, every time she comes on screen in this movie, I'm like, there she is.
Her character's awesome too.
Yeah.
She's really cool in that movie.
Goodness.
All right, that's it for Rear Window.
Yeah, I think we pretty much covered everything.
Great job,
to
Jim.
talk about in
It's
this
a
movie.
wonderful episode.
It was a lot of fun. I love revisiting classics from the past, and we really hope you guys enjoyed this episode because we love doing the old schools. Of course, new movies come out all the time, and we have to talk about recent stuff. But man, sometimes it's just good to just go back in time and revisit a classic from 70 years ago that still holds up.
Still holds up.
Still holds up to this day. Hope you learned some new stuff about Rear Window that you can show off to your friends and family members and impress everybody from this episode. Thanks for revisiting Rear Window with us all the way back from 1954. Become a patron today at patreon.com/Raiders of the Lost Podcast. Leave those 5-star ratings and reviews on Spotify and Apple, and take care, everybody.
See you next time.
This episode was brought to you by our chosen one patrons, Jacob Kossler and Nicholas Martin. Thanks so much, boys. Raiders of the Lost Podcast is a mirror image production. Sound mixing done by Jacob Kossler. Opening music by Chase Jackson.